The critically acclaimed and long-awaited trilogy, known as The Decline of Western Civilization, is now out. It's a complete box set with all three films. It's out from Shout Factory, great company. And we have the movie's creator and director with us, Penelope Spheeris, who also, by the way, directed Suburbia, Black Sheep, Wayne's World, and quite a few other films. And also with us, her daughter, Anna Fox, who is a big part of this story of the release of this box set. It's great to have you both on the show.
Well, thank you so much, Alan, for having us.
Yeah, the three. This is I remember hearing about these movies and these documentaries, whatever you want to call them. Never got to see them. And just last night, I got my box set, and I'm just now watching it from the very beginning. And wow, I am so glad you guys decided to do this. It was a lot of work. Let's just talk about each individual episode, or I should say film. The original one, which was more punk, and part two about 10 years later, which was the metal years, and part three. Give us an overview of each.
Well, I originally did, the first Decline, and started shooting in 1979, and it opened in Los Angeles here in 1980. And when it opened here, Alan, it was there were so many kids came that they shut down Hollywood Boulevard, and the chief of police told us that we couldn't show the film here anymore.
Yeah, Darryl Gates. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, Darryl Gates. And then, part two I did in the late 80s, 88 or so. And then part three, that was about heavy metal. And then part three was about punk rock again, and that was in 98.
It's interesting because this really takes you into the heart of the scene, the clubs, the mosh pits. It was the interviews and the sex, drugs, rock and roll. It was all there. It was real. It was raw. Very interesting. Very interesting. And with your...
and not everybody had a camera back in those days, like they do today. So, I was lucky enough to be shooting back then, so that kind of stuff is preserved now.
It's so interesting. You were putting out videos long before MTV from the Staple Singers, Seals and Croft, Funkadelic, but it wasn't really the music that you were into. That's why this captivated you, the metal and the punk, because that's kind of what you grew up with, that kind of energy, right? Is that what attracted you to it?
I always loved rock and roll, and I think like a lot of kids, it was my escape. If I had any troubles, I'd just go listen to a good song, And I think, though, if I had to say whether I was more interested in the music or the study of human behavior, I'm going to say it was probably the study of human behavior, because I just had, when I did the first movie, I had never seen people behaving like that before. It was crazy.
In fact, you said something, I think I've read that after you looked at some of the footage, you thought it was worthless. You figured all this, like after Chris Holmes, because he was drunk. Yeah. You felt it was worthless at one point, huh?
When I shot that interview, I took the cameraman, Jeff Zimmerman, behind a tree, and I went, Jeff, we got to figure out how to get the money to shoot this again, because it's no good. We blew it. We didn't get it. And then the producers, John Dayton and Valerie Ferris, who went on to direct Little Miss Sunshine, by the way, they said, we don't have the money. You have to just use it. So I cut it in. And it's weird because it's the part of the movie everybody talks about.
Yeah, because it's like, wow, this is real. This is raw. It really gives a sense there was nothing contrived about your movie at all.
No, I did try to... not sway it, one way or the other, and just show the truth,
Now, Anna, when you were growing up, were you conscious, or were you on this?
No.
Were you conscious of these films, the first one? Were you a part of it, or were you visiting some of the scenes?
Oh, yeah, a lot of those people were like family to us. We were close with a lot of them. I didn't go when my mom was actually filming parts of the movie, but I did go with her to a lot of shows.
She was only 9.
Yeah, I was 9 years old. I would go to Fear shows or X shows, Circle Jerks with her, and I remember falling asleep in the booth at the Whiskey when I was at an X show one time because it was past my bedtime.
It's so funny because as I look at this and I say, well, this is history. I mean, this is something that should be out. You actually didn't consider, actually, you did consider, Anna, putting this on DVD, getting this out to the public. And Penelope, you really weren't going to do that, were you?
Well, no. I mean, I think if it would have, if it wasn't for Anna, it wouldn't be done. Let's put it that way, because I had thought about it for a long time, but I never had the nerve to do it because it's my life's work, and I wanted it to be perfect, and I kept putting it on hold, And finally, Anna said, "Mom, you got to paint or get off the ladder. Let's do it, And I said, "Okay, then you do the work."
Yeah, yeah, you were right, Anna. You were right. You got it all. In fact, just volume 2 or part 2 of the movie, Alice Cooper, Ozzy Osbourne, Poison, Lemmy from Motorhead, Aerosmith, Kiss, Megadeth, Lizzie Borden. It's all there. It's just the history, the raw energy. And I happen to like metal. I happen to like a little punk. I'm a rock and roller myself. And so it all makes sense.
You probably wouldn't be on the radio if you weren't.
I don't know. It's just to me, AC/DC is one of my favorite bands in the world. I mean,
yeah, I almost got my insides blown out by those cannons when I was backstage one time.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was on stage one time, and they actually, boy, I'll tell you one thing: if you have to have your hands in your ears or your fingers in your
totally.
ears. Oh my!
Yeah, I didn't know the cannons were going to go off. It set me back about 4 feet.
Sounds like the London scene in Decline 2. They blew the doors off that place, remember?
It's incredible.
Yeah, oh no, not more fog.
And Anna, you dated Nikki Sixx at one point, huh?
Oh dear, yes.
Oh, the word got out.
Well, it was right before we filmed Decline 2, so yeah, I did.
So you were into the metal.
You, Mom. What's that?
You were into the metal too.
I was definitely into it. Actually, I dated one of the guys in Faster Pussycat as well. And now he's my local ADT security man.
Isn't that interesting? Something? I wonder, I mean, as we see music change and radically change, we know metal is still there. It's not what it used to be, but there's still that movement. There's still a little bit of a punk thing going on. What do you think happened, or is this something you didn't even analyze, either one of you, as far as how we got to the point where now metal and some of that raw rock and roll doesn't seem to be doing that well?
I'm going to call it the dawn of the digital age.
Yeah.
Ruined rock and roll. And, everything has just gotten kind of, mixed up together and homogenized, and there really isn't any focus. But I do have hope. I do think that at some point, some band is going to come up with something new and different and focused and bring us all back in,
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that's because that's right. It's kind of like what was happening in a sense during the disco years. And and your movie and your documentary was all about the backlash against that whole disco.
You know what? That is brilliant. I'm going to have to steal that because I'm kind of a music philosopher myself, but I'm going to give you credit. That's awesome philosophy right there. That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if it's MTV that really started the change, because when they started to change format from purely rock and roll for the most part, and then that's when I think as kids grew up, it just, they didn't have that feeling for rock and roll anymore.
Yeah, the energy dissipated, and they were kind of lost, and they got lost in reality shows or something. I don't know what happened, but we got to get our act back together, you guys,
And by the way, some of the other great movies. Now, this is one I didn't know you had anything to do with. I just read about this morning. You were the one behind the Beverly Hillbillies with Jim Varney, right?
Oh, I love Jim Varney. He was such a sweetheart. And yes, I actually, I would have gone on after I did Wayne's World, and I would have gone on to do any movies like Suburbia, more serious movies. But all I was getting offered were like comedies because of Wayne's World.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not going to do that stuff, you guys. But then they offered me like mega money, for the Beverly Hillbillies and the Little Rascals, and I'm like, well, okay then. I mean, I never expected to even make a living in this business, much less, do as well as I did. So I'm just very grateful, and I'm glad I was able to make a lot of people laugh and have a good time.
Right. Oh, yeah. And you were the natural because, listen, how many people really love heavy metal who are directing and making films? You were the perfect one for Wayne's World.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I got that job because I had done the metal years, that and the fact that I knew Lorne Michaels from years ago, and he always felt guilty for never letting me direct anything on Saturday Night Live. I did the Albert Brooks shows, pieces, I produced them, but the girls weren't allowed to direct, So I think he paid me back, though.
Mm-hmm. And you did the movie Clueless? I'm just trying to remember some of the other ones you did. Clueless?
I did Suburbia, I did Dudes, I did The Boys Next Door with John Cryer,
and Charlie Sheen.
And what's funny is when I watch Two and a Half Men, I did movies with both Charlie and John Cryer, and different movies, but I'm sitting there going, it's so freaky to see these guys together.
That's great. I mean, really, I love your attitude, and I'm so happy this box set is out because most Americans did not see this. It's the decline of Western civilization, all 3 parts. And it's interesting that last part 3, you kind of was disappointed with, not so much in your work, but just the mood of the world, of the country, the state of rock and roll. Talk about that.
Well, when I did The Decline 3, I really thought it was going to be a fun, happy movie, and about the new punk rock movement in the late 90s. But in fact, what it turned out to be about was homeless kids, gutter punks, And once I saw that that's what was more important, then I focused on that. And I love those kids. A lot of them aren't with us still, unfortunately. But I got my foster care license after I made that movie because I want to try and do something to help. And if there's any message we can get from this, it's, parents, please love your children,
Mm-hmm. Anna, I want to know what you're working on now. Do you have another project, or are you too fresh off of this project to have started something?
Well, right before we were getting this together, while we were looking for a distributor, which we ended up with Shout Factory, but we had started working on Decline 4.
No kidding. Oh, great.
Yeah, we're going to have to keep it on the down low, though, because everybody's got a camera these days, and I don't want to have somebody else get it out there while I'm trying to promote this piece.
Yeah, well, you got it. I got to tell you, I am really looking forward to watching all 3. I started watching the first one last night, and the Blu-ray box set comes with lots of extras, a lot of those interviews that were never seen before.
Yeah, thanks to Anna, who put them all together, because I couldn't handle it.
Is there a website for the box set?
Yeah, they can be got at shoutfactory.com or Amazon.
And then we have a website, but we don't sell. It's declinemovies.com. You can see the trailers there and a bunch of pictures and everything. But I'm just not good at selling stuff. I can make it, but I can't sell it.
Yeah, I hear you on that. So it's Decline of Movies.
Decline Movies.
Oh, declinemovies.com is their personal website. Declinemovies.com. I want to talk to you down the road again. This is great. I'm happy about this. I'm glad I got to see a little bit of it, and the box set came in time because this is the real deal. This is the history of rock and roll. It's there. It's raw. It was great having you both on the show.
All right, Allan. We really, really appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
Thank you, both of you. And
thanks.
Okay,
absolutely. And I'll be getting back to you, so remember my name.
Oh, you got it. All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.